Welcome to episode 13 of VR Roundtable. My name is Anthony. I'm coming to you live from Sacramento, California, and I am, of course, joined by Gary coming live from the UK. It is very late there where Gary is right now, but he's kind of going out of his way so that we can get a show to you guys because it has been a week or maybe a week and a couple of days since our last show. So we definitely wanted to get a show in there. And of course, we do have Steve coming live from Louisville, Kentucky. And this week, guys, let's go ahead and get right into it because we don't have a ton of time this week. We're kind of time constrained. So we really want to get into the major stuff that we really want to talk about. And this week, I feel like there are three major stories that we want to get into. The first one is the arrival of the Oculus Touch, the official launch of Oculus Touch. And I'll go ahead and kick it over to Gary. Gary, the arrival of the Touch, what is your thoughts now that it's available? The games are out there. We know what's going on. What's your feeling?
Yeah, it's good news for guys that own HTC Vive as well, but it's obviously especially good news for the Oculus Rift guys. Now they can finally get to experience what the Vive owners have been talking about for as long as we have. And, you know, all these reports we're hearing from Oculus Touch, everybody's really pleased with it. I think it's got a couple of little teething problems from what I've seen, but it's to be expected. We had the same thing with some Vive controllers as well. But, yeah, overall, it seems like everybody's pretty pleased with it. I'm just waiting to hear a few more reports because we're starting to hear things about how the big thing about this was the fact that it could do room scale. People have been experimenting with two sensors, and they are sort of confirming the fact that maybe a third sensor is more or less essential to get sort of problem-free room scale with the Oculus Touch, which is really what we've been hearing from Oculus anyway. So it's good news. And like I say, when I tried the Oculus Touch a few weeks ago, I was very, very impressed with those devices. They're extremely comfortable to use, and just the extra little functions that they have with the capacitive, I can't pronounce that, but the touch, so it knows if your finger is resting on the buttons or on the little joystick itself. So these little things can help in certain games, and it can bring unique features to certain games on the Oculus Store. So yeah, I'm really pleased that it's out there, and I'm just interested to read more about them, how they're performing.
Steve, let's go to you. And with these games being available right now, you can go buy Dead and Buried, $39.99, I believe. You can get Super Hot, $24.99, I believe. Zombie Riot, $19.99. The Unspoken, is that another $39.99 one? See, the thing is, we have to kind of look at this from the Vive standpoint, where are we going to buy these games and try to run them in Revive, or are we just going to kind of watch from the sidelines? Steve, you're looking at all these games. Some of them have to be pretty tempting. What's your feel?
Proceed with caution. You know, like, I think I wish Oculus would come out and actually say, hey, we want people, owners of HTC Vive, we want you to buy an Oculus headset. But if you don't, we still want you to buy our software because we make a lot of money on software. So I would prefer if they kind of gave it some more official, or any official support. That said, Revive, you know, I bought a couple titles. I played several free titles, and Revive works incredibly well. And I don't think it's doing that much under the hood, other than just kind of setting up some linking and things like that. So I'm semi-comfortable, and I think for me, you know, as I keep an eye on the games that I'm interested in, I'm looking for the compatibility list on Revive. I'm looking for it to be 100% rock solid, and then I feel about 90-ish% comfortable with a purchase. But until I see it, and there's a lot of case studies out there that suggest that this title, whatever in question, is working really well, I won't pull the trigger on anything.
You know, speaking of the free stuff, Gary, this was a couple weeks back or a couple shows back. Gary talked about this experience called First Contact, where, you know, when you're first screwing around with the touch controllers and you could run it through Revive. And me and Steve hadn't tried that at all, unfortunately. And now that, you know, with the launch of touch and actually like going in and really trying this stuff, me and Steve both tried First Contact. And just to talk about it for a quick second, I don't want to harp on it too long because we did that on a previous show, but there's something about the rendering engine in this game. There's something about the lighting. There's something about it where when you get that headset on and you're in there in First Contact, there's still like a little bit of screen door and you know, you're still wearing a headset and stuff, but I don't know what it is about the visuals, the colors, the lighting, something about it. It looks so damn real to me. Steve, did you kind of get that impression when you played it?
I thought it looked great. I think they are able to, that's part of the art style that they chose. And because you're mostly just standing at that counter, moving the tapes that the robot gives you and putting the butterflies on your fingertips, and since it's mostly a standing experience, they're probably able to up the graphical fidelity because, you know, the things behind the shelves on this bus or RV or whatever you're in, they don't have to render back there because you're not going to walk over there. Now, as I say that, somebody will probably tell me I'm wrong because they'll just walk over there with a big enough play space and look to see if something's behind there. But, you know, I think it looks great. I think they were able to leverage some efficiency, and I agree, even though you're in a headset and you know that you're seeing screen door and things like that, that it still seemed real. It was a very cool demo. The downside is that I probably won't go back and play it myself because there's not much replayability, but it's something that I would like to show other people. I think it's really, really cool.
I was just going to ask you guys actually what you thought of the implementation of Revive using sort of emulating the Oculus Touch controllers with the Vive controller, because I know that when I first tried it, I thought it worked pretty well actually, as well as it really could work on that controller. But yeah, it's interesting just looking at it because obviously none of us own an Oculus Rift. We're coming at it from a HTC Vive point of view. But I just wondered, Anthony, how did you think it played through, especially that First Contact demo? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit clunky because, I mean, it's clunky for us, you know, because it wasn't designed for us. And they're trying to translate it the best way they know how. And with the touch controller, you can have your finger sticking out and you can have your thumb up or down. And so they have to add that to some kind of button. They have to do, you have the two little thumb pads and then you got the two little buttons. And what happened for me was actually this weekend, we had some people over and I had a guy that wanted to try some VR. And I put him into First Contact because honestly, it's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Just the visuals, again, it's just striking to me. Whatever rendering engine they're using, I don't know if they spent like a lot of money on this and said, let's just make this look damn good, because it does. But I put him in that, and you know how the robot gives you those cartridges? No matter what he did, he could not figure out how to actually grab the cartridge. And I was like, here, give me the controller. And I was trying to do it while he had the headset on. And then I was like, okay, just give me the headset. Let me, because it's one of those things where you can't explain to somebody how to do it. It's almost like you got to fiddle with it and figure it out. And then it's like, okay, snap this down and you grab the thing like that. But it is very clunky. And that's my biggest concern. I look at some of these games like Dead and Buried and Super Hot, which is getting raves all over the place. I've been interested in Super Hot already, regardless of VR, and knowing that this was going to come to VR, and then the fact that your whole body is in there, when you move, the bullets start flying and stuff like that, and then if you remain still, doing that in VR, it's kind of like the Matrix type thing, you know, it just seems like it'd be perfect, and a lot of people are raving about it. And so I see some of this stuff and I'm very tempted, but the biggest problem for me is it's the controls. And it's like, okay, if it's a situation where I got to spend 45 minutes learning these controls And maybe, you know, I play a half an hour this day, a half an hour next day, a half an hour the day after that. And then, okay, now I got a feel for it. Now I know exactly what to do. I could probably live with that, but I'm kind of worried on some of the stuff where there's going to be little things in the game that just don't, you know, just little things where you're like, damn, I just can't grab that thing because it's just so hard. You know what I mean?
I in the toy box thing they released with it, I had problems picking objects up. So, but in hindsight, after the fact, I think I saw that they released an update. The Revive released an update, the developer Revive, that kind of addressed some of that. So I think there is a concern with the controls, but in the few titles that I played, there seemed to be at least some uniformity between the titles. And I don't know if they're all because they're Oculus Studio titles or not, but the same hand gestures were in Toy Box that were in First Contact. So if there is uniformity and you kind of learn that consistency, you know, to make the thumbs up, you do this gesture with your Vive controllers, and it's the same for every game, then I think it helps kind of tear down that wall. Otherwise, yeah, games are going to have a bigger learning curve, and, you know, we're going to be having to utilize our grip buttons more often that we don't necessarily like, and things of that nature. So it's just a case-by-case basis, and, you know, I'm going to be optimistic and say at least we have the compatibility and we at least have a chance, as opposed to being completely walled off to us.
Yeah. With what they've got to work with, I think they've done as good a job as they possibly can. Obviously, it'd be great if we could get some kind of Vive controllers with that sort of form factor, or something a little bit close to that form factor. That'd be great.
You know, one of the worries I kind of have with the arrival of Touch, now that Touch is available and it's out there, you had all these games that were waiting until December 6th, Arizona Sunshine, stuff like that. You know, they were all waiting until December 6th. And so now December 6th hit, Touch is available, everybody's buying the games, stuff like Hollow Ball and Space Pirate Trainer has gone over to Oculus and everything's great. But there is this worry that's kind of bubbling in the background, at least for me. And what it is it's the 180-degree front-facing issue, okay? And so PSVR and Oculus Touch, for the most part, your average Oculus Touch guy is going to have the two cameras on their desk, you know, positioned in the right way, and they'll be able to do front-facing 180-degree type games where they basically stand in a spot, and that's what we got on PSVR as well. And then the Vive can do all this room scale stuff, but is all of that going to be left on the cutting room floor? You know, so that's my worry. I actually did a post about this on Reddit, which I don't know if you guys saw this post that I did, but I got just hammered by everybody because what I said is I was like, I wonder if we might need to think about boycotting some of these devs that do these 180-degree front-facing things. And I basically said the death of room scale. And my post came off probably wrong. It didn't really make sense, but the reason I did this post is because I was playing Arizona Sunshine at the time. And what happened is I was very early on in Arizona Sunshine, and we're going to get into this in a little bit later, but I just want to mention this, is that there's certain parts in Arizona Sunshine where a zombie will never attack you from the rear, okay? And when I was first in Arizona Sunshine, I'm looking behind me all the freaking time, you know, because you're in a zombie game, zombie apocalypse. You're hearing noises all over the place. You constantly want to turn around and check your six and like, oh my God, is a zombie coming down back that way? And I kept doing that over and over again. And then I finally realized, oh, there's no zombies coming from behind. This is not going to happen. Now, you get to other parts of the game and there will be zombies coming from behind you, but I didn't really get to that point yet. And so I had just played a little bit of Arizona Sunshine. And then I saw this other guy's post on Oculus subreddit talking about the 180-degree front-facing thing. And it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I'm like, oh my God, now it begins where we get the watered down version of everything because no one's going to give a rat's ass about room scale because 90% of the market doesn't really have room scale, so they don't really have to worry about that. And so I kind of went into a panic mode, and I did this post, and it got drowned out, of course, by the worry by all these other Arizona sunshine drama stuff that came a couple of hours later. So I kind of got saved. That post that I did got buried, third page, old news. Nobody gave a care. And then all the other Arizona drama hit the scenes. I know you guys saw all of this. Gary, why was the subreddit for the HTC Vive was in a tizzy for like 3 or 4 days over this Arizona sunshine thing? What was like the big gist of this? You can go ahead and lay it out.
Okay, well, yeah, this hit. I mean, when you first load up Arizona Sunshine, you get this logo come up in front of you, and it's a strange one that I've never really seen before, where it says i7, Intel i7. So I didn't really think anything of it, and then all this started to hit on Reddit, and you find out that part of the game is actually locked out for anybody who doesn't own an Intel i7 processor. And not just any Intel i7 processor, it has to be one of the last few generations as well. And so obviously people didn't really like this because it's an artificial lockout. It's something where it can run perfectly fine on a lower end processor, an i5. It will run perfectly fine, because in a few months they had planned to unlock it then anyway. I think it was probably in March, something like that. They'd planned to unlock it. It was a timed exclusive for Intel i7 CPUs. So yeah, it caused a massive. I mean, I think Reddit was pretty much on the R5 was pretty much entirely that, the front page. And yeah, this is quite a big deal, and it's difficult because you can sort of understand what was happening from both sides of this. It is you can understand people being very annoyed, and at first I was annoyed. I wasn't really going to get angry about it or anything like that. I think the thing that stuck out to me is just how odd it was, because I've never seen anything like this as far as I can remember, where it's something where CPU is being driven to the fact that it's locking certain things out if you don't own this CPU. And you've got, looking back in the past, where you've got certain processors that do certain things that other processors can't do, then you'll get extra features in some games. Like, I mean, back in the 90s you had this thing called MMX technology on some of the Intel CPUs, and so you had a few extra features. But this is something different because they're artificially locking this out. And
if we play devil's advocate there, Gary, if they were going to open it up in March, how do we know, or have they stated otherwise, that they weren't going to take some of this time between now and March to optimize for lower end CPUs?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's possible. Although, having said that, the fact that they've now unlocked it entirely sort of negates that point a little bit.
I admitted I was playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I was trying to put that out there.
Yeah, so I should mention now, because of all this uproar that happened on Reddit and on the Steam reviews as well, they have now unlocked all the features, so anybody with any CPU can now get access to them. But yeah, it was an odd thing. And yeah, I've got a few other things to just say about this, but I'll pass it over to Anthony. What did you think of all this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just the whole Intel i7 thing. I was like, because when I saw the news, I read it, I'm like, what? It's weird. Okay, it's not the fact that a dev might be taking some extra money to do this or that is not weird at all, but just the whole Intel thing, I was like, that's a real head scratcher. And honestly, Vertigo Games, the company behind Arizona Sunshine, how they ever thought this would come out in a good way is beyond me, because the modern day internet, if there's something to complain about, people will swarm to whatever it is to complain about. I mean, it's one of the downsides of the internet in general, is we have this great forum where everybody can meet up and we can make comments about this and about that. But a lot of people that kind of I don't know, they get their jollies on like negative stuff where they can kind of go into a frenzy over it. They love this type of thing and they just attack it with incredible enthusiasm. And we saw how it blew up on Reddit. You had a thread where this guy is like encouraging everybody to refund Arizona Sunshine right now, you know, and there's like 1,000 freaking responses to it. And then you have another guy like, don't refund. I urge you not to refund. And, you know, it just blew up into some craziness. And honestly, I'm kind of standing on the sidelines here. You can get into all these different moral arguments, but right now I just want to play some damn games. No, I don't. I mean, I don't know what to say. You could go any direction with this thing, but I did really believe that the Intel i7 thing was just bizarre, just truly bizarre.
It was very bizarre. But I have this thing where I like to defend the unpopular position. I don't know why, but I think VR enthusiasts such as ourselves and the majority of people that I think make up the Reddit communities, we need to choose our battles. We have this game, and it's very, very much possible that Intel funded some cash to help the development of this game. I do not know the specifics, so I will qualify my comments with that right there. But we have a reasonably good game. I think most people enjoy the game and think it's a quality title, and it's kind of pushing up into that AAA territory. And I think we need to choose our battles. If they received a little bit of funding to kind of artificially lock that out, and the result is that we get this quality of a game, I'm willing to make that change very early. I'm willing to make that exchange very early in this life of VR. I think the benefits outweigh the cost of doing the deed. I mean, we're just talking about locking out single player horde mode. You could still play it multiplayer, or maybe I have it the other way around, but either or, you could still play the horde mode. So you weren't entirely locked out. It was just the one component of it. And if that's the exchange that we have to make to get some of these quality titles funded while the hardware community is low in numbers to support high dollar software development, I think it's a good thing, and it's something we shouldn't immediately dismiss. In a wider sense, if 6 years down the road this kind of crap's happening, yeah, speak up. But you know, this isn't PlayStation 4, this isn't Xbox, this isn't just kind of general PC gaming. We need this software, especially software of this caliber, to come out. And if this is what it takes, okay.
Yeah. Because what I was going to say as well, the fact of this, I agree with you actually, Steve, because at first you see all this, and the initial reaction, like I say, my initial reaction was that is just so odd, and it's just I wasn't really happy with it. But then you start to think about it a little bit, and then you start seeing posts by developers of Out of Ammo trying to give their reasoning behind it, and they've got some sound reasoning. You know, you've got this Arizona Sunshine devs. If they can get subsidized somewhat to produce a game of this quality, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if they lock out a feature which personally I'm not too bothered about waiting a couple of months for. That's fine. But it really comes down to the fact of expectation with these games as well. VR is such a new piece of technology, and yet at the same time I feel like it's carrying with it sort of all this baggage from gaming. You know, gaming's got sort of 30-40 years worth of baggage. When we first started with games in the late 70s, early 80s, we've got this situation where there was all these games coming out being made, like over here in the UK, you'd have kids in their bedrooms programming games, sending them off to publishers, and they'd be published in the shops. These games were not deep. These were just standard, just very, very basic games, and yet they'd sell because we didn't have any expectation of what we now have with gaming. We've got all these huge open worlds and these huge games with fantastic stories. We didn't really have that to that degree back then. So gaming had a chance to really like evolve over the years and have a chance to grow. VR is coming with this baggage because it's so closely tied with gaming. It's coming with this baggage where we sort of feel a little bit entitled that we should be getting these deep games immediately, and indie devs just are not capable of doing it. They've not got these teams to do it. Now, Arizona Sunshine is a game which is polished and it's of high quality, and if the cost of that is that it's being subsidized by some of these some Intel, for example. I mean, I'm sure they must have put some money into it. It's the only explanation really. And so to get that level of quality, like you, Steve, I agree. I think it's worth that price at this stage, just so we can let it thrive a little bit. As you say, if we're getting this a few years down the line, then we shouldn't. We should, at that point, maybe make a stand. But you can't, at this stage, it's difficult I find it difficult to be too hard on these developers, and you can sort of treat it to the fact, like, you know, you've got commercials on TVs and adverts. Now, I'm not suggesting we have commercials or adverts in games, but commercials happen on TV. I don't like them. I'd rather they weren't there, yet we understand they're there to subsidize the production of these programs. And at this stage, if we have to put up with something a little bit similar to that, then I'm not entirely against it.
Hey, Gary, can you pick up your mic and drop it? Very well stated.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, so we could keep talking about the Arizona Sunshine drama, but I kind of wanted to get into one other story. And this is a little bit off the grid, but if you're into VR and you're into AR and you're into the future, like this future of having things displayed in front of us that can transport us to other worlds, whether or not it's going to completely envelop us with it, or it's just going to put some small things into our real lives, whatever it does. If you're into that, then you're probably aware of a company called Magic Leap. I've talked about them a number of different times on the Vivecast and then also on VR Roundtable. And the reason I keep bringing up Magic Leap here and there is because this is a company that had some very powerful technology, okay? Because it had to be powerful because other companies like Google, Alibaba, Bing Gordon, who's the head of one of a venture capitalist group, he's the guy that founded Electronic Arts. You had all these people just throwing wheelbarrows of cash at Magic Leap, and they were doing it because they saw something spectacular. And so the hope was that Magic Leap, yeah, they're off in the distance. I know it's going to take them a lot longer than Microsoft with HoloLens. It's going to be a few more years, blah, blah, blah. But eventually, this Magic Leap thing, dude, this could be the thing. You know, I mean, that's what I was thinking in the back of my mind. It's like, Magic Leap, dude, this could be the thing where it just blows you out of the water. Like, this could be the thing. You know how we show some people our VR headsets and we put them in there and they do it and they're like, it was okay. There's a few people out there that are like that, right? Magic Leap to me was the kind of thing you put it and they're like, oh my God, like everybody would say it, you know, because it's just that incredible. Now, some news came out recently about Magic Leap where unfortunately it appears that maybe the bubble has burst on the Magic Leap deal. And basically, I read a bunch of stories on this, and basically what it boils down to is this guy, Roni Abovitz, or some, I forget his last name exactly, but I believe it's Roni Abovitz or something like that. He founded a surgical company that was doing, they were making like little robots that would perform, that would help with surgery. And he sells this company for $1.5 billion. Mako Surgical, I believe is what it's called. And after he sold that company, he pursued this new technology that he kind of discovered by accident when he was working on these robotic arms for surgery. Basically what it was is like these little fiber optic projectors, these little tiny projectors that he was working on for his robotic arm stuff. Apparently that translates over into the video world of possibly shooting basically light right into our eyes, just like we really receive light in the real world. And so what they did was they made this prototype machine. They call it the Beast, and it's the size of like a refrigerator. It's this huge, gigantic thing. And when people came over to Magic Leap to check this out, they had to go to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and they would go in there into their offices. They'd have to sign non-disclosure agreements and all that. And they would stick their head inside this contraption and basically look at stuff. And they would see things that just blew them away. Like they would see it and they'd be like, oh my God. And they were tripping over themselves to give money to this company. And the idea was, like, Bing Gordon actually made a comment on it, and he said, look, what we saw was incredible. And typically with electronics, it continues to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So when they invested in it, the idea was they'll figure out a way to miniaturize this thing and get it where they can put it onto somebody's head. And it's like a fiber optic scanning projector thing, the little fiber optic projectors that are shooting light out, and it's scanning back and forth to create an image that is so natural, the light is so realistic, that it would blow HoloLens completely out of the water. The latest news that came out is there is a website that got access to Magic Leap and was in there. And basically the word is that that original technology that wowed everybody, that the reason they got billions of dollars of investment, that they are unable to miniaturize it. It's not going to work. They got it to the point where they have a wearable, they had what's called a WD3, wearable display number 3. So they actually got it to the point where it was small enough to put on one person's head, but it's still like a large contraption with things running all over the place. And so ultimately they decided this is not going to happen. And so now but they're still going to have a product. This company is still valued at $5 billion. They have $1.4 billion of investment, and they're valued at $5 billion. They still want to have a product. So they kind of have been moving towards the HoloLens Meta, this company called CDG, a German company which basically that's where the HoloLens technology came from, them and Nokia. But basically they kind of abandoned the dream, the Magic Leap dream that we dreamed of like seeing incredible visuals that just blow us away. And now it's kind of like a HoloLens thing. Gary, did you see this, and what did you think about it?
Yeah, I saw this as well, and it's I don't know as much about Magic Leap, really. I've been following it from a distance for quite a long time. Somebody mentioned it to me quite a while ago, and I checked it out. And at that time, they were showing off these videos. I'm sure you've seen them, where the guy picks up a gun, and then he can use that as a basically a gun in the game that he's playing in his living room, and all these aliens are popping out of the wall in his actual house. So it looked incredible. Yeah, I mean, you see these videos and it looks incredible. Now, I think that is the video that it turns out, along with this news that we heard this week, that a production company actually made that video, or some of the other videos as well, which, I mean, I know that that particular video that I'm talking about wasn't it wasn't portrayed to the fact that this was actually being filmed through a Magic Leap headset or anything, but some of these other videos have claimed that they are. And I don't know if this is where part of the controversy has come from as well, where they're claiming that these were shot through a headset when in fact they've been produced by a production company. So this is all leading to really just disappointment for everybody. And now, like you say, it seems to be leaning more towards this HoloLens type equivalent. But the guy who tried it on one of these websites, he did an AMA on Reddit, I think. I only caught a little bit of that, but he was saying how it's pretty much like a HoloLens now, but with a slightly bigger field of view. So that's really all the knowledge I've got about it. It's disappointing because a lot of people and a lot of big companies have invested in this as well. So it's disappointing, but yes. Did you see this, Steve?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add that you guys didn't already cover, other than to ask this question. Has Magic Leap themselves said that they are kind of sort of abandoned the commercialization of this of the original tech?
They kind of said that their original tech is going to be more of a long-term project, that it might take another 10 years, but they're still working on it. And it's kind of, but it's basically they came to a realization that this is not going to happen in the next 5 years. This is not going to be our first product. We got to pivot to something else, or I don't know what's going to happen. So now they're quickly switching everything over to this more HoloLens type of technology. And then the other thing, it's not like they're going to completely give up on that, but it's It's more like a 10-20 year kind of deal where like they ran into a major roadblock that they're just not going to be able to solve it. Yeah, I mean, this is not like super huge news. It's news because Magic Leap was always this thing that was hovering over in the distance. I've said it before. I've been in different forum threads where people are talking about, oh no, Oculus is better than the Vive is better than this, and PSVR. And I kind of was thinking in my head, you know, when Magic Leap comes along, it's going to kill all these things. Magic Leap is going to be the thing where you sell your car to buy Magic Leap. It's going to be the type of thing where people break into other people's houses to steal Magic Leap. This is like Steven Spielberg type shit, is like their technology that, I mean, that's what people were talking about. People had seen this and they were like, people like this one guy saw it and he's like, your iPhone, everything, throw it out. It's all garbage. It's meaningless. I've seen the future and the future is Magic Leap. People were saying stuff like that. So either it was incredible hyperbole, but really what it was is they were seeing the beast. You know, they were seeing that, and that thing is incredible. I remember, I believe it might have been Addie Robertson of The Verge. She might have got a demo of Magic Leap, and she said when she tried it, it was this thing that you put on your head, but there was all this stuff that was coming out of it, all these wires and all this extra crap. And so she was like, I think she said it was incredible, but she just didn't know how they were going to get it small enough. So, you know, there was something there. But anyway, that's pretty much dead. So we've covered a few little news stories. Like I said, we don't have a ton of time on this episode 13. And we do have some games that we definitely want to get into. We were just talking, of course, about Arizona Sunshine and all the drama with Arizona Sunshine. And I believe all three of us have played Arizona Sunshine. So let me go ahead and kick it to Steve. Steve, you've been playing Arizona Sunshine. What are your feelings on the game so far?
Positive. I think the game is pretty good. So it's hard to talk about it because there's been so much coverage. You would think the inverse is true, but it's not. So it's a zombie shooter. It reminds me a lot of The Walking Dead because it's bright and in the open, and I don't want to say hordes of zombies, but there's a large number of them to manage, and the mechanics are fantastic. You know, I kind of have this duality where, and you talked about it earlier, Anthony, between the sort of the 180 and the full room scale experiences, where I've kind of come off the requirement of needing to feel like room scale has to be present in every game. You know, I'd rather software kind of dictate what's better. And for me, Arizona Sunshine kind of hit a little bit of a room scale nerve. And I know there's not a lot of 180 in it per se, but if you use your teleport mechanic good enough, it scratches that itch, or at least it did for me. There's a lot of management of picking up ammo clips and opening car doors and things of that nature. So for me, after getting a PSVR and kind of being enamored in that world, Arizona Sunshine kind of snapped me back to the Vive a little bit, because I'd been slipping because there hadn't been a lot of high quality content to come out in the last 2-3 months that really drew in that room scale, the space elements that the Vive does so well at. So the game itself, you know, I don't feel like I have to really spell out the game too much, because you know, everyone knows that it's a zombie shooter. What I can say is that they put a lot of stuff in your way, and it has, even though it's teleport, it has elements of moving in space. You know, I'm in the camp where I would prefer there to be what we've dubbed as the onward style of locomotion. I would like at least to give it a shot, but even with teleporting, I've found myself kind of ducking down by car doors, and I found myself even on a couple occasions dropping down to my knee, and some of it I think I'm forcing a little bit. I don't feel like I have to drop down to the knee, but I'm letting myself fall into the world. I'm letting myself fall into the mechanics a little bit, and I'm trying to have fun with it. You know, another thing I'll kind of comment on, there's been a lot of discussion on the shooting, and people feel like the shooting is off, that they need to add a gun angle option. in the menus. And I did some testing, or I guess when you call it that, with it, that if you actually if you know which eye is your dominant eye, for me it's my right eye. If I close my left eye and look out my right eye and line up the sights that are on the gun, the sight that's on the back of the gun and the sight that's on the front of the gun, and line it up, the aiming is spot on. I'm able to, with the base handgun that you get, I'm able to pick off the heads of zombies from a pretty good distance away. So gets the big thumbs up. I think it's worth the asking price for the most part. And I haven't tried everything. I think the mechanics are that good. I think the world is that good. And I think it isn't the best at any one giving aspect, but I think it does a very good total package. Gary?
Yeah, I had a few problems with this game. I've spoken to you guys about it, but for me, I could play maybe 15 minutes before I'd get some kind of a crash. And it's weird because I don't get too many crashes on VR games generally. So I thought it was a problem with the game, although nobody seemed to be reporting this. When I looked on the usual places on the internet, they didn't seem to be reporting any crashes. So I thought it's got to be a problem with my system. So I looked into it, I uninstalled it, I tried various things, but it kept crashing for me. So I've really not played too much of it. But having said that, last night I went on and I managed to get in almost an hour, I think, before I got a crash. So I played it then. And I'll just say before I go into what I think about the game, I did send an email to Vertigo Games just to tell them that it was crashing, and they responded straight away, to be fair to them, and they're looking into it. They asked me for a bit of extra information. So hopefully I'll get a reply from them soon and resolve it. But with the game itself, yeah, I'm really impressed with it. If the thing for me, I mean, I think that it helps having this voiceover part as well. It helps you settle into the game. Although I don't really like all his quips and things like that he's doing. I don't think they're just seem a little bit cliched to me. But it helps having some kind of voice in there anyway. And the models of the zombies are pretty good. They're probably not up to the standard of what I was hoping for, but I think they're, for a VR game, that they are exceptionally good in this game as well. And with the teleporting, I really don't mind the teleporting too much in this game. Again, I'd probably, like you, Steve, would prefer some kind of options to give it a try with just some kind of onward type locomotion, just to see how that changed the game. But with the teleporting, it's quite good, because in some games where you teleport, you open a car door, for example, and you're behind the car door, you can't just teleport onto the other side of the car door. You have to go round, teleport behind you first, and then work your way round as if you were walking that route. So you can't just pick a spot over the other side of a car and teleport over there the way you can in quite a lot of other games. And I think that's a good way of limiting the player in a good way, really. It's not because it's how you expect it would work in real life, obviously without the teleportation mechanic. But yeah, overall, I am really impressed with it. I just wish I could get these crashing issue sorted, and then I can really delve into the game a little bit more.
For clarity, I just want to kind of add it. I did have the crashing problem as well. I didn't get it till about, I don't know, hour and a half or so worth of playtime, and I've only had it happen one time. But it has crashed on me, so I don't think it is as narrowly experienced as maybe you were initially thinking. I just think it's not as permanent or as so long lasting.
No, I think I've seen a few posts on Reddit now, actually, where a few other people have reported it, but it's not really causing them as many problems. I think it's initially I had sort of 3 crashes within sort of 30 minutes of playtime. So it was pretty much unplayable for me at the beginning.
Then that kind of harkens to another point, though. The loading times are abysmal. They need to do better there. And I don't know why the glare from the concentric grooves of the Fresnel lenses, that's well known. Every developer making a game for the Vive, and presumably for the Oculus, I haven't tried the headset out yet, quit making loading screens, or screens in general, that are black with white text. Why?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to. You can do any color, any combination. So do better, developers.
Well, also with excuse me, with loading screens, don't just give us a black loading screen. Give us something to kind of look around at, because
Yeah.
when you have a headset on, even though it might only be 30 seconds of loading, it seems like 3 minutes because it's a sensory deprivation chamber,
Yeah.
and so if you're just looking at a black screen, but
We need loading screens for our loading screens. There's an
well,
exhibit.
on the PlayStation demo disc, Steve, when you go to the demo disc and you go to the different games and you first select them, it kind of has like a visualization of the game, but you haven't really started the game yet. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep, and that's annoying too.
No, but that little, like, if I had to stare at something like that, at least I have something
Oh,
to
I see what you're
freaking
saying.
look at.
Yeah. At least you have that to help you. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so for me with Arizona Sunshine, it actually worked good the first couple of times I played it. But then, and Gary was saying that it was crashing for him, and I'm like, oh, I'm lucky. It's working good for me. And then I had like 3 days in a row where I couldn't play it at all. Every single time I went into it, I would start it up and it would go through the very first loading, and then you would get this like monitor and it would tell you, put your hands at the side of your waist and then click on your triggers to calibrate, and then you hit this button. And so I would go through that whole process. And then I'd hit the button and it would go to the second phase of its loading, and then it would just stay there forever. And I would get a message on my screen that said, the game has crashed, blah, blah, blah. I had this problem for like 3 days in a row, I don't know if it was that many days, but seemed like a long time. I went on to various places trying to figure out, what do I do? This one guy said, if you go into Steam and you click on the game, and you go into like the settings of the game, you can rebuild the cache or like clear the cache or something of something. And I did that and it didn't work right after that, but maybe I had to restart my computer, and I didn't restart my computer. And then the next day I restarted my computer, and now I've never had any problem every single time I get in now. So that might have had something to do it, or there might have been some update or something. They might have kind of fixed it.
I'm gonna have to look into that. I didn't see anything like that. So yeah, I'll
it's something like rebuild the cache or clear the cache. It's for the specific game. You see it in your list, your library list, and you right click on it, and it's one of those settings, and you go in there and you can clear the cache. And it takes a while. You got to like rebuild the cache or whatever. But I did that and it works. My feel on the game is this is the most AAA game we have since Raw Data, in my opinion. This is like, there's certain aspects of this game that are incredibly polished. They have a narrator. There's a story. I remember, even though the story isn't the greatest in the world, but I remember a number of episodes back, we were talking about wave shooters and like every game is a wave shooter, blah, blah, blah. And I remember saying, well, hey, why don't they have these wave shooters where, okay, fine, you give me a wave shooter, but let me move over here and do something, and then move over there and do something, and then move over here, and then a wave shooter, and then I move, you know what I mean? Like, fine, I'm fine with the wave shooter, but let me do some other stuff. And that's kind of what this game does a little bit, is it might technically be a wave shooter at its core, but it disguises it really well. And you're going through a story, as simple as the story may be. And for me, when it comes to video gaming, the thing that I am most interested in with video gaming is I want to enter another world. I want to buy into being in another world. I want to be the star of a movie, and I want to be in the movie, living the movie. And when I'm playing Arizona Sunshine, I kind of feel like that. Now, it's a campy zombie movie that isn't the greatest zombie movie ever, or the greatest writing or the greatest scenarios and stuff, but I'm in there, man, and I'm really feeling like I'm really in the game. And, you have your gun and you have your other little hand, and, you're teleporting around. And these zombies, you talked about the character models. I think the character models are really good. There isn't a huge amount of variety. I mean, they only have so many different models, but they have zombies where it's like some lady wearing a bathing suit, and then you have a guy wearing like a fireman's outfit. You have this one guy that's wearing some shoulder pads, like he's playing for the Oakland Raiders or something. And there's different guys that different zombies that you encounter, and they have different attributes. Some of them you have to shoot them like 7-8 times, it seems, and other ones you just pop them in the head. Some of them take off running at you like a bat out of hell, and some of them are very slow and they spin around and do dumb things. And when they hop over the fence, if you're by a fence and there's a zombie on the other side of the fence, you think you're safe, right? And then the zombie just starts scaling the fence, and it's over that fence in about 2 seconds, and you're like, oh shit. The biggest problem I had with this game is the controls, to me, seemed kind of I don't know, it just didn't seem like it operated with the standard Vive technique of, like, if you teleport, usually it's the thumb pad that you teleport. If you pick something up in the game, usually it's just your trigger picking something up. And instead what they did was the top button, which is usually for like a menu or something, they made that your teleporting button. And then to pick up something and to hold it, you use the grips. And it can be really tricky to have guns in your hand, and then you see these grenades and you're like, oh, I really want these grenades, but you have to hold the grenade. You can't put it on your belt or anything. You got to hold it. So I'm like trying to hold 2 grenades, and I'm trying to teleport back to where this gate is and open this gate. And then these guys are running at me, and then I try to throw one of the grenades, and it lands like 2 feet in front of me and blows me up. And then everything turns green. You know how it is when you get killed, and it's like, oh damn, because when you get killed, you're waiting around for another 40 seconds to get back into the game, which kind of sucks. The loading is harsh, but if you want to be in a B-level zombie movie and feel like you're in that movie, this is the #1 stunner right now, in my opinion.
Yep, and I think it can be as fun as you make it. Go ahead and lean over that car hood. Go ahead and grab your other hand. I found myself kind of doing this with one hand and stabilizing my arm as I started popping people off. Like, you can do all of those mechanics, and it translates really well. So if you just kind of go through the game like, oh, I'm going to advance the story, and I'm just going to, you know, shoot these zombies as quick as I can to move on to the next area, the game is polished. It's solid still. But if you let yourself kind of get wrapped in, you let yourself use the environment, you let yourself, you know, as dorky as it sounds, you know, drop to your knee and start shooting, you can have more fun with it. And I think when that's not something I normally do. I'm usually the guy that just kind of runs through it. So when I let myself kind of unwind and do that, I found that I had more fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great game from what I've played. As soon as this crashing problem for me can get resolved, I'll be really, really happy to get back into that game. And like you say, Steve, with the same, I was exactly the same as you, using the gun like that, sort of cupping it with the other controller, and it works really well. It does make you feel really, really good in there when you're playing that game. And like, there's something about it as well, the fact that it's set during the day as well. A lot of these zombie games, things that you play, they're very dark, but just having this environment to walk around just makes it a change. It just makes you want to keep playing that game.
You know, the environment in this game, you know what it reminds me of? You know the Disney movie Cars?
Yeah.
It like the canyons and stuff. I love it, man. I love the sunlight. One thing it does in this game that I really love is if you're in the shade, okay, and you have your gun and you have your hand and you're in the shade, and then you walk into the sunlight slowly appears, you know, on your gun exactly the way it should. And some games don't really even do that, which is really dumb. But this one does, and there's just so much good stuff about it. Like, Steve, I mean, you were saying if you look down the sights, everybody complains about the aiming, but you know what? If all of us got a gun in real life and tried to shoot something, we'd be terrible at it. And I think this is probably actually pretty freaking accurate with the gun. It might even be too accurate, and that's what people are complaining about. But like Steve was saying, I've noticed too, if you actually close one of your eyes and you line up those little lines and you get it right on the guy's head and you hit it, you're typically taking off half of that zombie's head every time.
What I think a lot of people are doing is they're lining up the sight. I guess that's the correct term. Pardon me, I'm not a very knowledgeable on guns themselves, but they're lining up the sight that's on the front barrel of the gun and thinking that's all it takes. And what you got to do is you got to line that front sight up and get it between the
two grooves.
the two grooves that are on the back of the gun. And I've only played around with a couple of handguns. I don't know if there's like an assault rifle or anything cooler further in. I've only had a few handguns, but yeah, if you do that, it's like a laser. I don't think they've coded in, gun drop or bullet drop and other elements of physics. But one other thing, you were talking about the aesthetics. A few episodes ago, we talked about Abduction. And I haven't even had the time to go back to that game. But Abduction and Arizona Sunshine almost feel like the same game in terms of environment. I know I talked about it being kind of an Arizona Westernish type setting, and they almost look like they were made by the same people. They're very similar, both in quality and setting.
Cool. So that's basically Arizona Sunshine. Gary, I know we're running short on time. Do we have time to maybe get into one additional game or?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you want to talk about something else, that's fine.
Okay, Steve, I know you've been playing Eagle Flight for PSVR, right? A little bit? I mean,
Yep.
It's in the background there, right?
I chose it for the background of the week. First of all, shout out to Lucky's Tale. We haven't found a way to link any of our games to Lucky's Tale, so shout out to Lucky's Tale. Keep going, Lucky. Eagle Flight is... I thought it was a sleeper hit for me, and I almost I don't know why I just kind of blanked out on all media and all awareness of this game. I mean, I knew it was out there, but the little videos and images that I saw, it just seemed so unappealing to me, and for whatever reasons. So I got it in for GameFly because I had an empty slot and put it in and was stunned. Like, I don't think it's the most amazing thing since sliced bread or anything, but because I had low expectations, because I had complete disinterest in it, and it's the game that got sent to me in GameFly, I was so shocked at how much better than I thought it was that I kind of probably have elevated it higher than it truly warrants. But the game is just, for me, it's just fun. The graphics, I think, are really cool. The city is kind of cartoony. It reminds me of the Legend of Zelda game that came out 10 years or so ago that was kind of cel shaded. Kind of had that cartoony painted look. But the flight, and this is the main mechanic of the game, is you are an eagle, and you can see your beak in the lower portion of your headset. Out of your eyes, you see your own. It's kind of positioned where your nose is, and it feels natural, but it's a beak and it's a little bit longer. And you have the I don't know, the cowl, or the what's the equivalent of the eyebrows of the eagle. You kind of see that in the top of your view, so it kind of gives you this feeling of being an eagle. And you the controls are super simple. You just look where you're looking is where you'll fly to. And it's a controller game. You use a DualShock 4. I don't even know if it has move support, and I didn't even try. It didn't felt like it was needed. But you hit R2 and L2, and those are almost like a car racing game. Will speed you up or slow you down. And then as you progress, so you kind of start in the beginning of the game, you hatch out of your egg and you see your mom and your dad. And then they made a mistake here in that it's video and it's not a rendered set, but it's some of the best looking video, 360 video that I've seen in VR. But you still can see that it's video, and I think it would have been way better if they had actually rendered that scene. But so you're born, and you learn to fly, and you learn basic mechanics. You kind of progress through the game through a series of small stages or challenges that teach you the mechanics. And there's a small narrative to it. You're basically becoming you're learning to fly, and then you become an adolescent eagle, and then eventually you meet a mate, and you got to chase him or her around. But what it does really well is the mechanic. It just feels good. It just feels natural. At least for me, it just was just fun. It was easy to pick it up, and there's a multiplayer component that I got to try out a few times, and I want to play it some more. But you learn this screech ability, which is like shooting. You kind of put out this blast, and your eagle makes a screech when you do it, and that screech can take out other birds or bats. So you can take out falcons, bats, vultures, whatever else, other eagles. And that mechanic is in the online portion. So it's kind of a glorified capture the flag equivalent, where the match starts and it's 3-on-3, and somewhere on the map a prey will show up, and it's this big purple flag, and it's the equivalent of going and getting the flag, but instead it's a dead rabbit that you're getting. And then you kind of dive down, you got to look at it and fly into it and then pull up at the last second. And then you have to get it back to your nest, you know, and other eagles can take you out. So it almost gets into a little bit of dogfighting, and it was just a pleasant game. You know, I probably talked too long about it, but you know, it retails for $39.99, and I can't necessarily recommend it at that price. If it was a $20 game, for me, I would think it's a no-brainer. So, you know, if you want something fun, something the kids can play, it translates really well for them. You know, it's worth checking out. And I've also, I don't know if we're going to talk about it. I haven't played Werewolves Within, but it's made me be more cognizant of Ubisoft. Like, I've kind of like all three of their titles, I've just didn't really speak to me. Now, after being really surprised by Eagle Flight, maybe they have found this unique leverage and have found a way to be a little bit different than a lot of the other titles out there. I'm now going to pay more attention to Werewolves Within and then the Star Trek game when it comes out next year.
Yeah, so I tried Eagle Flight too, and when I first got it and the first time I tried it, I was having a lot of fun with it. It was really cool, but when I was done playing, I kind of had that feeling that I had when I very first tried Drive Club, and I kind of had the queasiness and kind of a headache and stuff, and it was kind of like, oh, that didn't work out so well. And basically what it was for me is when I was flying, if you want to do a sharp turn, you basically turn your head like this, and like it'll turn. And whenever I was doing like those sharp turns, there was something about it that it just didn't work for me that first time I played it. And so I thought that when I was going to come on here and talk about Eagle Flight briefly, that I would be kind of a little bit on the negative side of the coin. But what happened was today I was like, you know what? I got to give that Eagle Flight game one more try. I went into it earlier today, and I didn't have any problems. I don't know what it is. It's almost like with some games, I just got to play it a second time, and then it's like my brain adapts to it or something. But I wasn't doing quite as much of the harsh turns that I was doing the first time, so maybe that was part of it. But I was playing it today, and the polish in this game, the soundtrack, there's like a score. It almost sounds like a movie, you know, like a movie score. I mean, this is Ubisoft. This is a primetime game for them. You know, this is a serious game, and it's kind of a mix between like Pilot Wings and almost like a flight sim and like dogfighting and stuff. But instead of airplanes, it's eagles and vultures and stuff like that, and hawks and stuff. So, but it's very similar to Pilot Wings in some ways, where you have to go on these missions where you're flying through these hoops and stuff, like flying through rings and Pilot Wings. You have to navigate and do whatever. And then there's other missions where you're trying to protect this other eagle or whatever, and you have to do this scream noise to get rid of these vultures that are chasing it. And you're flying through the streets of Paris that's been overgrown, kind of I Am Legend style. You have deer and bears, and there's giraffes and elephants. I've never seen so many elephants all throughout Paris. I mean, where do they get all these elephants? I could imagine them having like 5 or 6. But they got like 100 elephants scattered around. But it's a pretty awesome game. I give this game a lot of love. The only thing I'll say bad about this game is it's a flying game. So, you know, I mean, it's like when you go to play a game, it's like, do I want to play Eagle Flight? Yeah, you know, I'm flying around. Do I want to play a flying game right now? So that's really the only negative thing I can say about it, is you almost kind of want to be in the mood to play that kind of game. And then also, there's just so much stuff we have right now. We are truly spoiled right now in VR gaming because it was so dry. The cupboard was so dry a few months ago. We were clamoring for any little morsel that we could get our hands on. And now it's like I'm kicking games to the curb because I just don't even have time for them. I love Bound. Bound is incredible. I haven't touched that game. Robinson the Journey is awesome. I still haven't finished that game. I still got it from Gamefly, but it's freaking Arizona Sunshine. All these other games are coming. Doom 3, BFG, and freaking First Contact. We didn't even talk about Ripcoil on Oculus, which is pretty freaking cool. And there's just a deluge of games. So that's the only downside I have about Eagle Flight, is that right now I'm such a well-fed gamer that I don't really need Eagle Flight. But if it was $20, it's an absolute must buy. The polish is there. The sound is there. The visuals are there. It's awesome. But it is kind of a Pilot Wings, kind of a flight sim-ish type of game. So you got to be in the mood for that.
Yeah,
So,
I'm interested in this game. I've not tried it yet, but it is coming out on the Vive in a few weeks, I think. So this was one game when I first saw it. I saw videos of it a while ago, and it looked pretty good to me. It looked interesting. But then I saw a demo of it at E3. It might have been E3 this year, where they had Palmer Luckey and a few other guys on there playing the multiplayer aspect live on stage, and to me it sort of took all the shine off it. It really didn't look that impressive to me, but from reading the reviews on the internet about it, it does sort of make me want to get back into this again. Now, I don't know if I'm going to pick it up for the launch price. I'll more than likely wait until it drops down a little bit, based on what you guys have said and what I've read on the internet as well. But yeah, it certainly looks good. And like I say, with this other game, Werewolves Within, that seems to be getting a lot of talk on Reddit at the moment. I know that's I don't know too much about that game. I know it's a game that people play in real life as well, where you have to pretend to be something you're not. I'm not too sure exactly on the rules of it, but a lot of people really seem to like that. So that's something else which is using VR in some different ways, some interesting ways that you can probably get behind. But it's just whether you want to experiment with these types of games for the asking price at this stage.
me and Steve are going to have to time it on GameFly so we somehow both get Werewolves Within. So maybe we can get in a game. But I'm glad
may be
it's
the next one that I pick up.
I'm glad it has a physical version.
Yeah, I'm scared that it is relatively small. As far as I understand, it's essentially the community dries up, the game dries up with it. But other than that, it looks promising, and I'm probably very pretending to be something I'm not. So
yeah,
I'm really gonna dip into the Ubisoft Kool-Aid here, because they pleasantly surprised me, and I think there's a reason the front page of Reddit.
You're breaking up a little bit, Steve.
Yes, I read it.
Oh, I think are you getting problems as well, Anthony?
Yeah, no, he was breaking up. We didn't really hear that, Steve. I don't know if
talking.
But you know, one cool thing is, like you're saying, the community might dry up on that, but then when it comes out on Vive, there's a whole new community, and supposedly Ubisoft was going to set it up in such a way where PSVR players can play against Vive players and can play against Oculus players and all that kind of thing. So hopefully the community will survive a little bit longer than that. But yeah, that is definitely a major worry. I don't know if it has any type. Does it have like an AI where you can play? I doubt it. I don't know how that would work.
No, I don't know that either. I'm not too sure, but no, I'm pretty sure it's all just multiplayer. But it'd definitely be an interesting game to try. Yeah.
Alrighty, well, we've been running a little while here. I know we still have, there's so much more we could possibly talk about. A lot more games and stuff to talk about, but we're kind of running out of time here. Gary, it's super late there in England. I know you got to get to bed soon so you can wake up and get to work and all that type of thing. So we're going to go ahead and cut episode 13 off right here and call it episode 13. That'll do it for our show this week. And maybe we'll try to look into possibly a bonus episode later this week. Possibly me and Steve might try to swing a little short episode where we talk about some stuff. Gary's been super busy with work lately, so I don't know if he'll be able to join us for that, but maybe we could squeeze in a bonus episode to try to cover some of the extra stuff we didn't get to today. But basically, that's going to do it for our show this week, guys. Once again, if you can leave a comment on our YouTube channel page, or if you can leave a review on iTunes, we like that, of course. And again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always shoot us an email at vrroundtable@gmail.com, and we might include one of your questions on a future show. So there is that. And that's basically going to do it. All righty. See you guys next week.
Cheers. Thanks for watching and listening, guys. Bye.
Later.
Good night.